Hey, how's it going, everybody? Scott Spreitzer here. He's Doug Upstone. We are DocsSports.com. Talking a little Super Bowl action. Can't wait. It's here in Vegas, and it has been a madhouse here in Las Vegas already this week. In fact, we have seen, or we're supposed to see over 300,000 visitors to Vegas over the next few days, right up through the Super Bowl. And Doug, I was driving past the stadium, I think it was Monday night, about 10 o'clock. There were a ton of police cars. They had the two main streets going next to the stadium blocked off. This was 10, 11 o'clock at night, people going in and out with all their supplies and all that kind of stuff. But something I saw, and I tried to take a picture as I was at a stoplight. And of course, the stoplight changed right away just to show. I mean, of course, they got on the stadium, the big moving animated pictures of the Niners and the Chiefs. And I'm like, I'm just blown away because I've been here for 40 years. Never expected to see a Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Yeah. So it was kind of surreal, pretty cool. But anyway, we're going to talk about some props on this show. We're going to talk about where the line is, where the tickets and the money is right now. We're talking about this Wednesday night. So that's kind of what we're looking at in case there's any line changes by the time anybody sees this. But Doug, before we get to all that, let everybody know what you got going this week. Super Bowl package from Doug Upstone.
Yeah, it's going to be. In fact, speaking of not imagining have a Super Bowl, I read today that already Vegas is going to be in the rotation of Super Bowls going forward. So that's really interesting. Before the game's even played. So that's great for the community, great for the city. So yeah, that's all good. And speaking of all good, well, you know what? I'm going to have a 6-unit best bet going on the game. Not a little bit different a way of going about it. I'm not going to give it away here, but a little bit different compared to likely what you'll see. But within that, on best bets since week 3, I am 11-4-2. That's 73.3%. And with that, that's up over $4,100 worth of profits. And speaking of props, Scott, well, we're going to be talking about props, and I'm going to have a props best bet. I'm still waiting because we're not releasing these picks until Thursday, so I'm going to wait and see what the line does to make a determination if it's going to be a 6 or 7 unit play. But I'm going to have right now at least 6 prop plays, and since late October in props and the NFL, 15-6, 71.4%, Scott. So I am happy to see this coming and looking forward to it. And I know you are too. Take it away, Scott.
That's putting them in the win column. That's putting the biscuit in the basket. That's building the bankroll, everything you want to say with records like that. And yeah, I've got, again, the packages over at DocSports.com for the Super Bowl will be available Thursday afternoon as they are throughout the football season over at DocSports.com. And I too will have a play on the game, side or total, and also props. And it's been a great run at Docs. I mean, the last 3 years, I went 5-0 last year, 3-2 the year before, 5-0 the year before that, 13-2 at Docs the last 3 Super Bowls with all sides, totals, and props. And going back 9 years now, 37-13 with sides, totals, and props in the Super Bowl. So as you can see, that's about 4 plays on average per Super Bowl. I don't go crazy. I don't have 25 props. We look to also, by the way, and I know Doug looks at this also, the best way to give yourself a better chance to win your props is to separate your props from what you think or which side you think is going to win the game. Because if you're wrong about who's going to win the game, it's going to destroy your bankroll pretty quick if you're playing props based on that. And, again, we're 13-2, but that means that there has been 2 losers in there. And I got to tell you right now, 3 years ago, I remember having the wrong side in the Super Bowl, and if I would have tied props to the side, it would have been destruction. Instead, we were able to win. That was 4 years ago, actually. So we were able to have a winning card. So make sure you do that. All props, all Super Bowl sides, totals over at Docs on Thursday afternoon. And these top play runs, 7-star run has been great, 162 and 111, and up over $20,000, and that's a nice long-term run. And some short-term runs obviously mixed in that group. So we'll look to keep it going and check for our daily plays each and every day over at DocSports.com. All right, enough of that. Let's talk a little Super Bowl action. Doug, as we speak, the San Francisco 49ers are a 2-point favorite, the total 47.5. And I will say this, the Westgate, which is a sharper book in Las Vegas, has been at 2.5 for a couple of days now. Everywhere else is basically 2. And before we jump into that, I do want to talk a little bit of value, Doug, because we're always talking about line value and all that kind of stuff. Over the last week plus, stay with me, folks, I've seen lower level seats between the 40s going for as much as $55,000 per ticket. Right now, Wednesday afternoon, midweek, I'm seeing lower levels, anywhere from $10,000 per ticket to $25,000 per ticket. So it's gone down a little bit if you waited. The value lies with not buying a Super Bowl ticket. I think that's pretty obvious. And if you did buy early, you've already lost against the closing line. It's as simple as that. But again, the city expects over 300,000 people. The football stadium holds around 65,000, give or take. I just wanted to say this, folks. If you're coming in town, great, have a blast. Hotel prices have gone from like $200 a night to $1,800 a night in some rooms. Las Vegas is still going to be here after the Super Bowl. Come next week, come 2 weeks from now, have a blast. Anyway, having said that, we know that the value is not on buying a Super Bowl ticket. If this game was being played in Indianapolis, you'd probably get a ticket for about $1,500. So there you go. Anyway, Doug, after saying all that, I know you bought 3 or 4 tickets last week, correct?
Exactly. Yes. I closed the second mortgage on my house, so got that under control. So everything's taken care of that way. And so now I do have and this just kind of typifies as to there used to be actually fixed pricing on tickets, and how I know that for sure is that I still am a Packers season ticket holder, and my name came up in the lottery the year the Packers played Denver in the Super Bowl, which was in San Diego, and that ticket was $450. Okay, and I thought, you know what? At that time, I thought, in my lifetime, I'll never be able to go to a Super Bowl. So it was my one and only chance. And besides, I could afford it then. And, that pretty much turned out to be right.
Well, they have $450 tickets for this Super Bowl, but you're in Summerlin, about 10 miles from the game, and you're
right, you're trying to get into the sports bar.
What's that?
You're trying to get into the sports bar.
Hey, there's a new joint here in town called the Durango Station, which is part of the station casinos. So I was there last week with some friends that came in town from LA. My wife and I, we all went over there, and we looked into the sports book, and I swear there's a table that looks like a breakfast nook table. There's a bunch of them. It's a beautiful sports book, beautiful hotel. But these tables that are about the size of a breakfast nook that seats 4 people not so comfortably, we're going for like $800 per person, 4 people, wow. $3,000. It was around that neighborhood. And I've seen other places that have been charging $5,000 for a table or a couch to watch the game. Listen, if you guys want to come over, I have a couch. I'm going to have a few people over. I won't even charge you a penny. You just bring your own booze and we're there, right? So anyway, let's get to what the people are here for and want to talk about. And I want to talk about the sharp side and all that kind of stuff, which side is sharp. 2 joints that I trust very much have said that they've received over 70% of the tickets thus far on the Kansas City Chiefs. One of the joints says they've received over 60% of the money along with the tickets on the Kansas City Chiefs. Yet again, this number's been locked in at 2 for a few days now. And, I hear people on the radio, some that I respect very much, who, if they have the Chiefs, they keep saying that, this is the sharp side. Why is everybody talking about San Francisco being the sharp side? The Chiefs have the better quarterback. The Chiefs have the better coach, and on and on and on. And I just got to throw a line out there that Jimmy Vaccaro, who I've worked with in the past, that he said to somebody who was talking about sharp side. He goes, I won't say the person's name, but he said, Joe Blow, there are no such thing as sharp sides. There are only sharp numbers. So there you go. And as far as I'm concerned, Doug, the books have made a great, the right number for themselves. That doesn't mean, though, that there's not an edge to one side or the other, and maybe even a big edge for some people with their handicapping. Just because the books made the right number for them behind the counter, it doesn't hurt them, no matter who wins the game and gains them some money, does not mean that there's not a side to wager in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Scott. It is, though, the rare situation of a public underdog, okay, going into it. So, usually, you get a few of those a year, but not a lot of them, especially in big games. So that's what's kind of the rare situation here. But, in terms of the game itself, I agree. Nobody's quibbling about the number. And the other thing, too, that's interesting is the total hasn't budged a bit at 47.5. At least after San Francisco beat Detroit, at least what I saw, the opening line was -1 for San Francisco, and within an hour of that, it went up to -2, which essentially it has stayed at this entire time. So with that, it really does seem that everybody's satisfied with the number, at least to this point, on both the side and the total.
Yeah, it seems to be. And again, I mean, I think the books have done a good job on this. There was an early advanced number that had San Francisco -3, before they opened this thing up and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking at, I got a line service, and I'm looking at the screen right now, and you can put up any number of books basically that you want that are on this line service, and I've got about 18 up on my screen right now, and all but 2 have 2. So 16 out of the 18 books have 2. There's one particular spot in Las Vegas, again, kind of a sharp joint at Westgate. They've got 2.5. And then another joint on the Strip, it's kind of a standalone to a certain extent. They've got 1.5. So there you go. Everywhere else is 2, except for those 2 books. Excuse me. So anyway, having said that, we're both going to release our plays on Thursday afternoon over at Docs. And let's get to some props. What do you say? I've got 3, and I'll let you kick it off, man. What are we going to start with these Super Bowl props?
I'm going to start it. I just want to add one more point to what you said. I just thought this was interesting. I went through VEASAN, and I looked up something, and I was just curious enough to want to know. And every state, I think there's 24 that they have on there. Every state supported Kansas City except for this is both the money and the side, and this is just information. I don't know that it says anything, but New Jersey, New Jersey was the only state that had San Francisco at 50 plus on the money and 50 plus on the handle or number on the bets. And I just thought that was just sort of interesting. I don't know why. And, New Jersey is the second biggest betting state in terms of volume. So I just thought that was sort of interesting. Don't know what it means, but I thought it was kind of, like I said, interesting. So, all right, let's get into it. Typical Super Bowl first periods are lower scoring. Teams have a lot of nerves. They got the feeling out process of this. And, you might maybe get the occasional trick play that comes to play that seldom really works, but it's just what's happened. Now, if you take 47.5, doesn't take a rocket scientist to divide that by 4. You're basically talking about 12 points a quarter, and one that's 11.5. Yet when you look at the various sports books, like Scott was talking about, if you open these up, what you're finding everywhere is 9.5. Some are at -110. A couple of them are a little more juice on the under. In Kansas City's 3 playoff games, they have scored 2 touchdowns on their opening drive. The other side of the coin is San Francisco gave up a field goal to the Packers, and they gave up actually 2 opening drive touchdowns to Detroit. It was down 14-0. Using this type of thought is that Kansas City seems a little bit likely to maybe score some points in the first quarter, but San Francisco is scoreless in their 2 playoff games, and Kansas City's only given up 10 points in the first 45 minutes of their 3 games in the first quarter. I'm going to recommend under 9.5 for the first quarter on this one, Scott.
Sounds good. I like it. I'm going to go to a player prop to start things off, and this is Rashee Rice under 6.5, -105 receptions, and under 66.5 yards receiving. If you look at what happened to the AFC Championship, Mahomes completed 30 of 39 passes and targeted Rice 9 times. Here's the thing. He caught 8 of those 9 targets. That generally doesn't happen, an 89% completion percentage. And again, he had to throw the ball 39 times to get there. So I doubt he's going to have 30 out of 39 completions this week. Maybe he will. But hitting 8 of 9 to Rice came against a Ravens team that looked overwhelmed, not necessarily by Kansas City, but by the moment. It was a strange game plan. We won't get into that. We've already talked about that on personal videos that I've done. But I'll be shocked if it happens again. Maybe KC wins the game. I just don't think they're going to throw the ball 9 times to Rashee Rice. The Niners are 5th in the league, allowing just 5.9 yards per pass. They normally fare well against opponents' top wide receivers. So they'll give some extra attention to Rice in this one. And I think it stays under in both the receptions and the receiving yards. Again, the number 6.5 receptions, and the receiving yards 66.5. Doug?
There we go. All right. So the on top of what I said already, this kind of correlates to to what I have said, and I recommend, I should say, Kansas City. It's plus 225 for their first drive to score a touchdown, and or you can go the route of a field goal, which is plus 320, and that's a field goal attempt. That's not a made field goal. So just keep that in mind. And it just backed up by the same thing. I think the game plans that Kansas City has put together so far in the playoffs, they seem to be clicking. San Francisco hasn't looked good right from the start, if that's the case. And if San Francisco wins the toss and defers, Kansas City gets the ball first. I would not be at all surprised if they get a score. So I'm going to recommend, like I said, the Chiefs. You can do either or, whatever you're comfortable with. Plus 225 for a touchdown or plus 320 for a field goal attempt.
Not a bad price when you got a quarterback named Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to go back to a player prop here. 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk, under 62.5 receiving yards. If you take away the off the face mask 51-yard reception against the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship, Ayuk was held to a grand total of 18 yards receiving in that contest. And again, that was a weak Detroit Lions pass defense that were able to put the wraps on Brandon Ayuk. The Lions finished the season, by the way, folks, with the third worst passing yards per attempt average in the NFL and the second to last in passing yards allowed per game. So KC's fourth in passing yards allowed per game, second in yards per pass allowed. They're playing a tougher pass defense here. I think Ayuk stays under 62.5. What's up next for you, Doug?
All right, so we're going to finish it off with Andy Reid seems to have made a very conscious decision in the second half of the season to run the pigskin more. And since week 13, that has been the case. Pacheco has gotten healthy, and he has seemed fully intent on having him run the ball 20 times. With this, you look at I forget the place that I actually saw this at. I apologize for that. But the Chiefs in the running the ball up the middle, they were number one in the NFL since week 13. And San Francisco, if you watch their two playoff games, they were vulnerable both up the middle against Detroit and Green Bay, as long as outside the tackles. So they've had some real severe problems here. So I don't have any problem going over 16.5 for Pacheco on total carries for the Super Bowl.
I love that kid, Isaiah Pacheco, man. I mean, he's not this big, giant guy. Boy, he runs with serious intent. And he's quick, but he's also powerful, so he can make guys miss. He can run them over sometimes too. My final prop is going to be Christian McCaffrey, over 90.5 rushing yards. This has gone up a little bit. Here's the thing. Last Friday, I did a show in Phoenix, and that rushing yardage prop was 89.5. And then, I think it was Monday when I recorded an individual prop on this, or did one on a show, it was all the way down to 87.5. Now it's up to 90.5 in the book that I happen to be looking at, and another book that I looked at had it at 91.5. So it's gone up a little bit as we've gotten closer to the weekend, but I still think 90.5 is not bad. And the Ravens, they didn't run against Kansas City. It was a stupid game plan. One of these days we can have a big video when we're bored during the summer months where we can talk about how bad that game plan was. It'll be about a 4.5-hour video. But the bottom line is, if you watch that first quarter drive when the Baltimore Ravens tied the game at 7, one of the plays was about a 15, 18-yard run by Gus Edwards, their fine running back. He didn't get another carry till the second half. He got 3 carries the entire game. It was the most god-awful big game coaching game plan I've ever seen. I don't think that Shanahan and company are going to get away from making Christian McCaffrey a big part of this football game, win or lose. He's going to run the football. He's going to get his share of passes thrown to him, the whole shebang. KC 25th in the league, allowing 4.5 yards per carry. And again, if Baltimore doesn't shut it down, they only lost by 7. If they don't shut down the ground game, we could be talking about the Ravens in this contest right now. So McCaffrey over 90.5 rushing yards as we speak. And again, don't forget, we have all of our plays that are going to be up on Thursday afternoon on our individual homepages over at DocSports.com, so you can check that out. Any parting words, Doug?
Yeah, well, hey, I actually have one question for you, and this has to do with a prop bet. Now, on this one, I don't think you're going to sell it. I have sold it in the past, tongue in cheek here. But here's the thing: is that it's one of the most popular ones every year. Okay, and the history for myself personally, of terms of whenever I've done, even as a kid, okay, I've done this, is I always go with heads, okay, because it wins 50% of the time. So I always go with it. So Scott, I have to ask your opinion on this. Are you going heads or tails, okay, for the beginning of the game for the coin flip?
Oh my gosh. I might go length of the national anthem and maybe I'll throw a little coin flip action. I have never bet the coin flip. I've got friends that do for the fun of it. My good friend, and rest in peace, just a wonderful human being, Greg Daraban. We were good friends for 20, 25 years, whatever it was, passed away a few years ago. He would bet the national anthem. He would bet the coin flip, and he'd have 30 props by the end of the game. So I always say hats off to Greg because I never saw him have a bad Super Bowl. He was always ahead at the end, but sometimes it was 17-13, and he got enough juice on his side to be able to win those props. But I do have a few friends who have done it. I have one friend, I'm not going to mention his name, but he had about 23 props and was selling them about a decade ago. And he tied a lot of his props to who he thought was going to win. And I believe he went like 2-20 on his props. So that's why I say, folks, be very careful. Make sure your props, obviously, if you're doing this for entertainment reasons, have a blast, have at it. Never bet more than you can lose. And also, don't tie those props to who you think is going to win the game. I learned the hard way. We all do for the most part. So, one more thing I wanted to mention. The show I do on Friday is moving from the Radio Row this week to the Westgate. So, folks, if you're in town, come by the Westgate Superbook. The show starts about 2 p.m. Pacific. I'll probably get there between 2:30 and 2:45 Pacific time due to having other shows on Friday. But, man, come by and say hi, and looking forward to seeing a few people out at the Westgate Superbook. That is going to be a madhouse. It already is. Anyway, for Doug Upstone, I'm Scott Spreitzer. Check out all of our plays daily on our homepages over at DocSports.com. And you know what to do, folks. Let's put them in the win column.